Thanks, Letty.
So now we have a reflection from one of our participants or panelists that have joined us for all 3 years, has been around for all 3 years and a founding, what I would consider a founding member of this work. We have State Representative Chris Rabb, who's going to actually share his reflection and remarks this morning with us.
Good morning. I am so glad to be back. I'm moved for so many reasons. And thank you, Sister Kathy, for your introduction, your wisdom, and your commitment to racial justice and to all the things. I get to claim you and the Order of St. Joseph and the Sisters because presently, at least until November, you are part of my legislative district. And Sugarloaf is one of the prized places in my district that I have experienced so many wonderful moments, not the least of which has been transforming justice. What I have learned, what I have processed, what I have shared has culminated in all the things that are most meaningful to me as a public servant and a legislator and a human being. I'm moved because there is a diversity of thought and lived experience, not just on this panel, but all the folks who make these moments happen, that allow us to envision and reimagine a society where justice is what is fueling everything. It is not a consequence of other things. It is not a afterthought. It is the thing. And that's something that I embrace because I don't experience that perspective in my work in the state legislature. Justice is only discussed by a majority of my colleagues when it is on the tail end of the Pledge of Allegiance. They focus on liberty, not on justice. And the irony of that is we're in a state where fellow Pennsylvanians who have been accused, sentenced, and incarcerated for crimes they did not commit and are duly exonerated are given less than nothing when they are released. Less than nothing. A lot of people think they get, oh, they don't get any money. That's certainly true, but they get less than nothing because they are not eligible for all the services that other folks get when they are released. And that is a great indignity and something that needs to be fixed among so many issues. I sit on the House Judiciary Committee, where in the past 50 plus years, we, and I use we loosely, have enacted into law over 1,500 new criminal offenses. But that doesn't make us safer. That doesn't make us more just as a Commonwealth. It makes us more carceral. And never is that the solution to address the issues that confront us today. Most of my colleagues are not aware of restorative justice. They're not aware of the fact that the vast majority of folks who are in the system, who are offenders, are themselves victims. Those folks who've experienced extraordinary trauma in their childhood. And somehow that's irrelevant because of the profile of the folks who they deem are the most criminalistic. And that goes to a much deeper set of systems of oppression, including racism and misogyny and so many things that together have fueled a legislature that has so punished our state in the worst ways. And as someone who represents Philadelphia, here in Northwest Philadelphia, we're the most incarcerating city and the most incarcerating country in the world. And we wag our fingers at other so-called uncivilized nations. And here we are. our third largest expense in our annual state budget of roughly $40 billion, is putting people in cages. And it took us a state Supreme Court decision to decide that it is inhumane and unconstitutional to lock up children for life without parole. That didn't even need to happen. That wasn't justice that overturned that precedent. It was essentially a form of restitution. Justice would have not been locking up children as adults in cages. That would have been justice. If we honored the humanity of all people, irrespective of the body they inhabit or the zip code in which they were raised. But that just shows the work that we have to do. But we have to have difficult conversations. We have to have informed conversations. We have to have conversations with people with different experiences. Most notably, people who are closest to the pain speak from their perspective and their expertise. And that's something also that is uncommon in the state legislature. But I'm not here just as someone who represents the 200th legislative district and the 65 souls I so lovingly serve. I'm here as a father of 2 Black boys. I'm here as the son of a Black man who was raised in Jim Crow, Kentucky during the Great Depression, who had to experience the indignities of being Black in a racist society where he felt he had no agency, where he was considered a suspect just walking on the street. And 40 years later, I had that same sensibility growing up in Chicago, where I feared the police, not because I'd done anything wrong, but I feared how they would process me and how they were trained to view me as a Black boy and a young Black man. And then 40 years later, I am a father of 2 teenagers in a very violent city. And I'm concerned about their well-being, and all Black boys and girls and everyone. Because when we talk about public safety, too often we talk about, at least implicitly, protecting the sensibilities of the white population, frankly. Public safety has really been a proxy for how comfortable white people are in society. So I use the term community safety, because irrespective of what community you are affiliated with or the community you are ascribed because of how people see you, you should feel no less safe than anyone else. And let's just be real. This event has happened in Chestnut Hill, a beautiful community that is very safe to most people. But even as the state legislator here, I sometimes worry that when I drive around that community slowly in my car, that I'm gonna get stopped saying, "What are you doing here?" And no one should have to feel that way. So irrespective of what community you claim or has been thrust upon you, you should feel as safe as the most privileged person in this society. So what does community safety look like? What does justice look like? What does rehabilitation look like? And how do we fund those things so that we build a sense of healing and belonging and shared prosperity? That's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in playing around the edges. I'm not here in embracing buzzwords that sound good because that's what's happening in corporate media. I'm here because I've listened to people closest to the pain, many of whom are on this panel. I'm here because if we don't lean into this boldly, nothing will change. And the upside is, when we look back at all those previous social justice movements in this country and beyond, the people who have been on the front lines have been young people, women, and people of color. These are communities of struggle because they acknowledge that the communities that they're a part of are struggling against systemic issues that impact everyone. and it forms part of their identity, their social identity. If you don't realize there's a struggle afoot, then you may be part of the problem. This is a struggle that involves everyone, but particularly people closest to the pain. And we have to describe that pain. We have to diagnose it, and we have to find the best ways to heal ourselves and each other. Because unless and until we heal ourselves, we cannot grow stronger. And when we're strong and we work together, we are indomitable. And that's what gives me hope. That's what my faith is based on, because I descend from 16 great-great-grandparents who were born as far south as Mississippi, as far north as Manhattan, who were born into a society where slavery was the state law, and they all died free. And it didn't just happen, and it wasn't because of a stroke of a pen from Abraham Lincoln either. They liberated themselves with their allies, and that's what we must do in this moment. And that's why I'm here and so supportive of transforming justice. Atif, your leadership, your team, and all the stakeholders who make these moments matter so deeply. Thank you.
Representative Rabb, thank you very much. Thank you for continually answering the call, right? So, and it's without, a second goes by, I send you a note, and, within a second, you're answering, and like, I'm there, and you're fighting the fight. I mean, everything you described, when you look at your colleagues and the work that you're doing, and obviously what they recognize, see, and understand, they see the world very differently. Or don't understand it in the context that that we understand it. There were some powerful remarks that you made there, especially when you think about who's on the front line. When you talked about that, which is very important, because I think that goes unrecognized quite often on who's really on the front line fighting the good fight. And I want to thank you for being on the front line fighting the fight, because you are there, you are doing the work. And I really want to thank you for that. And thank you for being here this morning.
You're very welcome. Although I would like to make a small note, and that is, I see myself more on the sidelines. Coaches are on the sidelines. Cheerleaders are on the sidelines. Fans are on the sidelines. The folks who are on the front lines are some of these other folks on the panel. And we got frontline dads, right? We got Ruben. He's on the front line. He is a perfect example. And there's a place for people like me on the sidelines. It doesn't mean I'm any less valuable, but I serve a different role. And most people will not be on the front lines, but we have to honor and amplify the work of those people who are. So I just want to make that point. I have value, but it's not necessarily on the front lines. But nevertheless, we have a role to play, whatever that is, major, minor, visible, invisible, in front of the camera, behind the camera. Everyone needs to step up. And so I'm happy to be an advocate on the sidelines doing what I can.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that distinction. And thank you for, again, your willingness to be that advocate and do the work from where you are. Because I think that's the important note that you're making there. You're going to, from wherever you sit, be supportive, do the work from where you sit. So we thank you for that. So